It's time to talk fantasy football. It's time to let them know. Where you let us crunch the numbers while you crush the competition. So grab your playbooks and crack a cold one, because here's your hosts, Teak and Baney.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Teak, again with my co-hosts, Baney and Badge. And we have another special guest for you guys. Today, former ESPN radio producer, now writer for Outkick. Please welcome Dan Z to the podcast. Clap it up, boys.
Wait a minute, we went through that whole thing about you pronouncing my last name and then you just skipped it?
Hey, you put me on the spot.
I got
scared.
I called an audible. Last second.
Jeez.
Omaha. He
Uh,
Omaha'd it.
I did.
Yeah.
I had to do it just in
Yeah.
case. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Dan.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, Dan. Teak trying to say your name. He was practicing today for 12 hours, and he didn't even try to say it. So he just called you Dan Z. But the guy was practicing. We're excited to have you.
We had a whole pre-production meeting about it.
It's true.
So make sure you guys go follow Dan on, I keep saying Twitter, now it's X. Go follow him at Real Dan Zach, and go to Outlook.com for all of his content. So thanks
Okay,
again.
come
Dan.
on, man. You're not going to say
Yeah.
my last name. You're saying my company wrong.
Yeah, Outkick.
Outkick, I said. Sorry.
And the Twitter.
Outlook's an email server. That's not going to help you.
That, and we do have his X on the screen
Outkick.
for you too.
He'll put a graphic up.
But
So
why don't you take us off here, Badge?
Dan, what we want to know is what got you into this particular field, and tell us about your journey through ESPN and what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Went to Penn State. Started as a journalism major. Planned on writing. Got hooked up with the campus radio station kind of out of nowhere. Someone was like, hey, you should stop by. We do a daily show. I was like, all right, I'll check that out. Got on the radio and was like, oh, this is pretty dope. So stuck with that all through college. Graduated. Just started Googling Penn State ESPN. Found someone named Amanda Gifford. Shout out AG. She's a bigwig there now. At the time, she was working at ESPN Radio. Shot her an email. Hey, what's going on? I went to Penn State. I work in radio. Any career advice? You know, that sly little career advice. Like, hey, can you give me a job? But you can't say that. So, looking for career advice kind of thing. So she got back to me pretty quick. Was like, hey, we got this part-time job. My dad was like, you can't move to Connecticut for a part-time job. And I was like, oh, yes, I can. So I did. Picked up everything pretty much 2 months out of college. Moved to the center of Connecticut, state I'd never been to. Got a job as a production assistant at ESPN Radio. Worked there for almost 10 years in the audio, radio department, podcasting, the whole nine. Towards the end of my tenure, it became pretty clear that my philosophical and political beliefs didn't quite align with what the worldwide leader was looking for at the time. So, just at some point became like, hey, this isn't going to work out, not a good fit. So I left ESPN in 2021 and kind of bounced around a little bit, did some stats worked for a company called Stat Factor, prepping broadcasters for games, started a blog. And someone at Outkick saw my blog and was like, hey, let's talk. So that's kind of how it went. Ended up at Outkick. Been at Outkick for a little over a year now.
That's awesome. I still remember to this day, Dan, when we were at our boy Grass's house playing pool. We were hanging out that whole summer, golfing, having a good time. And you told me you got that job at ESPN and you were moving. I was super bummed out, but super happy for you at the same time. So
actually, you were involved. If you remember, that was the summer that I jumped in the pond at whatever golf course that was. And I was freaking out. Yes, I was freaking out, though, because I was like, oh, shit, ESPN's going to check my Facebook. They're going to see me jumping in ponds at golf courses. I'm like, we can't hire this loser. So I had to jump on Facebook and take it. I was like, dude, take that down. Take that. Untag me. Take that down.
So, yeah, Teak, I don't know if you remember. I told you about that when we were on that 17th hole at Elk. So this is probably how Dan started betting, actually. I bet our one buddy Paul at the time, winds were outrageous, and he was hitting a sand wedge or something. I bet he couldn't get it on the green. We were having a couple cocktails, drinks, So I was feeling good, and the guy stuck it this far. I babied out, we'll say.
Yeah, the bet was he wouldn't put it on the green, and if he did, Dennington had to jump in the pond. Dennington, of course, just like TK with my name, totally bailed, wouldn't do it, and I was like, "Look, man, a bet's a bet. I mean, someone's got to pay for this bet." So I did. I jumped in the pond in my underwear.
Yeah, this guy jumped in the pond for me, so good dude right there. So that is how we got into the betting.
That's right, and I
thanks
think
again.
a few weeks later you said, "When I get married, you'll be my best man," and I didn't even get an invite to the wedding.
No, yeah, I got capped out, but another story.
Wow, you're lucky I agreed to do this.
Well, we're happy you did. So you're the man, Dan. So thanks for that bet. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you.
We're gonna kick it off. We'll start with Baney. The boys got some questions for you. So kick it off, Baney.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit you with the two-parter. I wasn't expecting this first part, but you were talking about Penn State and everything. Who's your favorite athlete at the time when you were there? Like, did you have anybody specific that really stuck out? Anybody you got to interact with, maybe?
Yeah, this was the Michael Robinson time. My favorite athlete, technically, though, is Terrell Pryor because we made him cry, and I was there when that happened, and that's one of my favorite sports memories of all time. Because we made Terrell Pryor cry, and that was the first. Oh my god, I just blanked out. What's it? Riot. Oh, it was the first Penn State riot I was part of. There were 3 throughout my career, but this was the first one. And I don't know if I can tell this story on here. I don't know how you guys are with, but
Fire away.
so I go to this riot. Like people are just going nuts, man. Like we just beat Ohio State. We just beat Terrell Pryor, Heisman candidate, the whole 9. And we're going up the street. And as soon as we get there, like the police are already there. They're in full riot gear. As we're walking up, you can see like literally like the spray of tear gas like up over the crowd. We're like, oh shit. So we duck into this like apartment lobby, me and my friends. And all of a sudden this kid comes running in and he's got blood just gushing from his face like everywhere. And we're like, oh my God, like this dude just got messed up. Like we got to help him. And right as we like go to help him, he goes, somebody's got to help me, man. I swear to God, I don't have AIDS. I swear to God. And I was like, whoa, bro. I was not thinking that, but now I am. Like, we got to get away from this AIDS-infested dude because he's spewing blood everywhere. So I have to kind of give it as like a tie to Terrell Pryor. But yeah, that was freshman year was probably my favorite year at Penn State.
Sounds like it. Zeke, you got a lot of topping off to do.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna top that one off, but
you guys probably didn't think AIDS blood was going to be a reference on this podcast. I don't know if y'all are keeping score at home and you had that on the bingo card.
Yeah,
I guess I'm gonna go a different route than Penn State years. I was questioning who was your favorite person to meet or work with while you were at ESPN at the time?
So, people will ask me, is everyone at ESPN like kind of a douche? And the answer is no. Almost everyone I worked with, like political stuff aside, almost everyone on air, and people will ask like, oh, how's so-and-so off the air? Like almost everyone is on the air who they are off the air. If you think they're a douche on the air, probably a douche off the air. Same thing goes either way. My favorite person is Booger McFarland. He's still my best friend to this day. Just played golf with him last weekend. Really, really cool dude. We've hung out tons of like he's just the man. He's honestly like the most down to earth person you'd ever meet. Mel Kiper, I really loved working with. He and I would get into. He used to love to watch The Bachelor, and then he would do this segment on his show, like ranking the Bachelor girls as if they were draft prospects, that was like one of my favorite segments to produce. I actually started watching. I had never watched the show, but I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of my job. Now I have to watch it. I got to know what the hell he's talking about, how to produce this segment. So I loved working with Mel Kiper. People always want to know about Stephen A. I don't dislike Stephen A, but he's one of the few people who does put on an act for the camera. He's not like that off the air. If you just talk to him in the hallway, he doesn't start yelling at you or screaming hot takes. He just talks like a normal person, and then the camera goes on, he turns it on. Otherwise, like, man, I had a funny encounter with Scott Van Pelt one time. This was early in my career. I was working in radio. He was doing his daily show with Rosillo from 1 to 4, and I was just literally working in like our screening department. I went to the bathroom to take a piss, and he was on the air. And I get into the bathroom just before he does, but I see him coming in behind me. And there's only one urinal. Like, it's a small bathroom, one urinal, 2 toilets. And I realized, like, well, he's on the air, so he probably needs the urinal so he can get out of here. Well, when I took a step towards the urinal and then was like, oh shit, I should give him the urinal, and then went away, he looked confused. He was like, hey man, if you got to shit in the urinal, you got to shit in the urinal. Like, I couldn't possibly explain to him in that moment what had happened, but I just kind of shook it. I was like, all right, Scott Van Pelt's a cool dude. Like, you know, he played it off. So yeah, pretty much everyone. Most of the people on air are exactly who you think they are, quite honestly.
Nice. Well, hopefully you didn't try and shit in the urinal at Penn State your freshman year. So,
I think we have time for all that.
Just kidding, Dan. That's great. You still talk to Booger. I remember, and I think Teak remembers too, our fantasy football draft days at High Pressure. You actually called him when we were drafting. That was unbelievable. So, yeah. The fans are probably now going to be wanting Booger on the show. So, Dan, you got a little bit of work to do for the boys. So, you and Booger.
Well, as soon as I get my wedding invite, you can have Booger on the show.
Oh, man. Shit.
Fingers crossed for Teak's future wedding. Maybe we can make that.
No. Dang. Well, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to pass it back to Baney.
Yeah. Piggybacking off that, the Penn State thing kind of swayed where I was going with this, but back to the beginning, I was going to ask, I think Booger's going to be the answer, but who is the most famous or your favorite person in your contacts?
The most famous person in my contacts, probably Charles Barkley.
Oh, wow.
I would say maybe George Foreman. I don't know. It depends how old you are. I guess that question usually depends on sort of the age bracket. Booger's definitely not the most famous person on my phone. I joke with him about that all the time. Like, dude, you're like 12 at best. I'd have to go through it. I don't know. Barkley is usually I've been asked that question, and yeah, I think it's Charles Barkley.
Did you ever golf with Charles Barkley? And
I've never met Charles Barkley. He's just in my phone. I've texted with him. That's about as far as it goes. Like, this is not me pretending I'm friends with Charles Barkley. I'm not friends with Charles Barkley, but I do have his phone number.
I was just going to ask because people have been telling me my tee box swing looks like Charles Barkley, so that's why I was curious right now.
He's gotten a lot better. I don't know if anyone's paying attention. Like, he used to not be able to swing a golf club, and now he can. So, you know, it's kind of like you.
Badge has
I have hope.
Better.
I have hope. So
it's been rough lately. I can agree to that.
This past month, I don't know what happened. I can't get off the tee box. But
I don't know if you see it. I got a nice little golf trophy here, so I have gotten quite a bit better.
Good. Well, when you join back in the draft, you're going to be my scramble partner again. We're going to take it.
Oh, yeah, we did play a scramble together.
Yeah.
Yo, Lucian was cheating, though. That was some garbage.
Yeah, him and Fry kind of took it. That's before you came, or were you in there?
Yeah, that was before me.
Okay, yeah, I think you took Fry's place because we kicked him out for cheating. So, but Tate, you got another question?
Yeah. What part of working at ESPN did you like the best? And then I know it's been just a year at Outkick, but what's the best part of Outkick as well?
I mean, the best part of working at ESPN was the experiences. Like, I got to do so many cool things. I went to the SEC basketball tournament, got to cover it, like be on the floor, like talk to the players and stuff. That was a really neat experience. Went to Monday Night Football. You can look it up. I don't know if you guys have the ability to like play video and stuff, but I helped get a rule changed in the NFL. I've been petitioning Roger to call it the Dan Z rule. So far, no movement on that front. But it was the Monday night game. It was a couple years ago where, if you remember, it was like the Patriots absolutely beat the piss out of the Jets. And at one point late in the game, the Patriots, I believe, were punting, and they kept false starting on purpose, but the Jets kept declining it because they were like, oh, we're not going to give you the 5 yards of extra room. And they cut to Belichick, and he like was smiling on the sideline or whatever. And so I asked, like, I wasn't even really covering the game. I was just like, Booger invited me and my wife to go because she was a big Patriots fan. And so we were there credentialed as media members, but I wasn't really working. But I was like, hey, let's go down to the press room after the game and just, we could see Brady and see Belichick sat in the front row. And I noticed that no one was asking Belichick about this thing that happened. So, the moderator was like, all right, last question. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. Like, I was legit nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend. Like, I was sitting there like, my wife was like, do it. I'm like, it's Belichick. He could stare through your soul, man. Like, he could get me kicked out of this room. Like, I don't know. But I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I raised my hand. I was like, yeah, so, the cameras cut to you when you were taking the false starts and you had a smile on your face. Like, what was going on in there? Like, was there some kind of gamesmanship? And he was like, no gamesmanship. There's a loophole in the rules that every time we took one of those penalties, the clock would restart and the play clock would restart. So we just kept running 30 seconds off the clock over and over again, and they were declining the penalty, so we just kept taking more time off the clock. And it's a loophole, and it's a loophole that should probably be closed, but right now it's open. And sure enough, later that year, Mike Vrabel used it against Belichick in the playoffs, and then that rule got changed that offseason. And I still maintain that if I had not said anything in that press conference and if Belichick had not used the word loophole in that press conference, I don't think there would have been another word spoken about it, because presumably he'd been doing that for years, and some other coaches may have known about it. I don't know. Got changed that next offseason. Dan Z rule? I think so.
Yeah,
at least a notation in the rule book. You don't have to call it to Dan Z, but brought to our attention by Dan Z. That's all. I'm not asking for too much.
Dan Z rule, I agree. That's pretty impressive. Belichick's a smart guy.
He actually, and the funny thing is, he kind of gave like a nod, like that was a good question. Like, no one else seemed to notice that. The problem with, and what I noticed too, is like, when you get in a room like that with a bunch of beat writers, most guys write their like game story during the game. And so they are looking for specific quotes to fit in what they've already written. Like, oh, the Patriots run game was great. Hey, Bill, talk about your run game. Like, cool, I'm going to plug that quote in. But as someone who was just sitting there, was just genuinely curious about what the hell was going on, those guys were all looking for very specific things, and that's fine. They have a job to do too. I didn't have a job to do. I just wanted to know what the hell was going on, because I legitimately didn't know. I didn't realize that the clock was running. I don't think most people knew what was going on. The Jets didn't even know what was going on, so I don't know how most people were supposed to know. But yeah, it just came down to the fact that I just wanted to know, and he kind of gave me a look like, yeah, good for you for noticing that.
What's your thoughts on them trying to reopen this investigation to ban the brotherly shove, the tush push?
A concerned fan.
Not concerned.
He's an Eagles fan too. It's their signature. So.
Oh, is he? I didn't notice from the 3 jerseys, the fat head, and the 4 hats. You're an Eagles fan?
Yeah, just a Nick
Thought
Foles
you just liked the colors.
No. So they've reviewed it last year. They agreed to keep it in the rules. Everybody else is allowed to do it. Other teams notably don't do it as well as Philly. And J.J. Watt even said, I mean, even if they ban it, then Hurts will just do it by himself and still be just as successful. I don't know. For them to re-look into this, relaunch an investigation, now try to use injuries, I just think is sweet. I think that's ridiculous. A league that notoriously sweeps injuries and all this stuff under the rug, now they're trying to look at that to ban this play is crazy to me. So I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll answer that in a second, but I do want to mention the funniest thing I saw on this was someone was like, man, the Giants purposefully injuring 3 of their own players just to get Philly's play banned next year. Like, that is some 4D chess that none of us knew the Giants had in their bag. Like, they got that outlawed by injuring their own players a year early. That's genius.
Dable, Coach of the Year 2024.
The problem with what are you going to outlaw? The question is, like, what is the rule going to be? My thought would be they would say you can't push an offensive player, but then that happens all the time. I mean, are you going to literally stop that? Because you'll see times when, like, running backs get stacked up after a 2-yard gain, and then all the offensive linemen come in, and they put, like, do we want to get rid of that? Like, is just pushing offensive players forward going to be banned? I mean, what exactly are they going to legislate would be my question. Like, I would have to know what the plan is.
I think it's a ridiculous thought. I mean, football is just literally lining up and beating the guy across from you, and if you can't do that, then how are you supposed to win the game in the first place? So
Yeah, one thing I would like to see them do, though, that does drive me nuts about that play is everyone lines up offside and no one seems to care. The defense, and then they called it on Philly 2 weeks ago, right? They called Philly for an offensive offside, which I, again, did not know was a thing. Offensive offside.
Here's the thing, too, is I don't know if you listened to Kelsey's show at all or ever. They called it on Dickerson. However, it was actually Kelsey's hand because he had both hands down, his right and left hand, and they marked his hand as being Dickerson's in an offsides call. So I don't know. That might have missed one.
That, and also the defender, the nose tackle on defense, his entire helmet was over top of his hand was almost touching the football. It looked like he could snap the football to the defense, which would be, let's do that. Let's just fight over the football from now on. Rugby. Let's make it, if you want to make it rugby, let's make it rugby. I would love to see, instead of, they're like, hey, we got to get rid of kickoffs. They're not safe enough. All right, cool. Line the teams up 10 yards apart. Throw one ball out there. Whoever gets it, their ball. Let's go.
Well, just to go off that kickoff thing, aren't they experimenting with the kickoff with the XFL right now too? The
XFL, yeah, the XFL's solution looks pretty good. Where they stand essentially just 10 yards apart and you can't go anywhere until the returner catches it. Just eliminates. But I don't know. It's one of those things where we're getting farther and farther away from like what football is. Like it just doesn't look like football. But then again, people want the, here's what I don't want. And I've heard this bandied about. Like, all right, if we get rid of kickoffs, because they want to get rid of kickoffs. Trust me, they want to get rid of them. But the problem is the onside kick. Like, we need a way for the offense to be able to get the ball back. We don't want a situation where the offense, or, after you score late in the game, because, we want, and they want to improve that. But the idea of a 4th and 15 play is the one I hear the most. I hate that idea. And the reason I hate that idea is because, first of all, you shouldn't be able to score on that play. Like, on an onside kick, if you recover the ball, you can't advance it. Like, it's dead at that spot. The defense can advance it, but you cannot. So I guess if they were going to do that, it would have to be after the 15 yards, the play's dead. I don't like, people are like, it's just another offensive play. It's 4th and 15. So if you don't get it, it's a turnover on downs. But I'm like, yeah, but now the defense has to guard the entire field. They have to guard against a potential touchdown on this play, on a play that's really just supposed to be about whether or not you get the ball back. I don't think that's fair. If anything, what they should do is like a conversion from the 10-yard line, and if you get in the end zone, you get to keep the ball on whatever yard line they decide, or not. But I don't like the idea of, this is just going to be another offensive play where we could potentially score a touchdown on what is essentially supposed to be an onside kick. So I don't want to see that. That would be worst case scenario.
Yeah, the game has definitely changed over this decade. I saw some hit highlights. It's night and day, boys. So,
I mean, they used to call it jacked up. Now you can't even, it's like, look at that guy. He doesn't even know where he is. Look at him. He can't even fight. He's in the wrong huddle.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
silly, dude. He went to the wrong huddle because he's concussed. What a jackass.
So, yeah, the game is changing.
Which is great for fantasy, though, because the offense is exploding, which is awesome. Makes it more fun. Although, man, the penalties are just, God, they ruin the game. They really just ruin the game. I mean, at this point, it's so bad that just every play, right? Your eyes after the play, right down to that bottom right corner. Right down to that, like, just waiting for it. Like, just put the flag thing up. Just put it up.
I was talking to Teak and Baney about it last episode. Penalties are a bettor's nightmare, especially on 3rd down. And that defense keeps the drive going. I've lost countless games like that. I mean, these penalties are just bettors. They crush the game betting.
It's also discouraging the running game because at this point, I mean, all the analytics nerds have figured it out. Like, running plays are almost useless. And in a lot of cases, it's more likely you're going to get a holding call and lose 10 yards than you're going to gain anything positive. So you might as well just pass the ball because you got a shot at pass interference, defensive. Like, there's way more that can go right on a pass play, which it was never supposed to be. The whole point of the pass was like, yeah, you can move the ball faster down the field, but of course there's a better chance the defense is going to intercept it. But now it's like, no, there's very little risk. The receivers can't get touched by the defenders. They can't get hit. There's really nothing the defense can do. There's more defensive penalties. It's not great. Look, I like defense and running and like a good, hard football game, and I like that we still have a few of those around. But it's at this point, and we can talk about this, and we will, like Arthur Smith. Like he runs an offense like he's coaching in 2002. It's insane. And the Falcons are 3-2, which is wild. But they don't like they run the ball like it's 2002, and they want to milk the clock and limit the possessions, and it's like watching. I can't even watch a Falcons game because I'm like, this isn't modern football.
Bringing it back.
Single-handedly, Arthur Smith is trying to return football to 1975.
Put that Falcon helmet on, Teak, and tell us what you think.
I mean, he's right. It's doesn't help his cause that Ritter can't throw the ball, so got to do what works. And finally, people are picking up the run game, man. And
That's kind of the other argument is like, well, maybe Arthur Smith's not dumb. Maybe he realizes the limitations of his quarterback, and he's like, hey, man, this is you want him throwing the ball 40 times a game? I don't.
yeah, and he just did last week, and he actually showed a pretty good showing for himself, which is it got my eyes perked up. Do I think he's going to be there long term? I don't, but we'll finish the season. Hey, maybe they grab Kirk in the
One
offseason.
other thing on Arthur Smith, though, because we're on it, and this is a fantasy football show, nothing pissed me off more than in that press conference. I think it was after week 1 when someone asked him about like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and he was like, "Oh, I don't care about fantasy stats." Like, no, bro, they're asking you because you took these guys in the top 10 of the last 2 drafts. Why you're not giving them the football? It's not fantasy football question. It's why are you not utilizing the 2 guys that you spent top 10 draft capital on the last 2 years? Sorry.
I agree. And it shows the numbers show the last, I believe, 5 or 6 games, Pitt's got over like 60, 70 yards. They won. So got to get in the ball. Do I think he's 100%? No. I don't know what your opinion on it is. I really don't think he's at 100%. I know it took Barkley a longer time to get back from that same injury, and now Barkley's obviously hurt again. I believe it's a different issue though.
Yeah, I mean, but Kyle Pitts at 80%, still probably a top 5 tight end in the NFL. Like,
yeah.
you see him make plays, and you're like, I mean, Duke can still ball. I mean, what was the stat from this week? That was the first time that Drake London and Kyle Pitts both went over 75 yards in the same game in their careers together. That's coaching malpractice. I'm sorry. Whatever you, even if Desmond Ridder can't, it's not like we're saying you have to throw the ball 50 yards. Like, just get the ball and like design some short routes for these guys. Like, just get the ball in their hands. That's all we're asking for.
Yep. You're preaching to the main complainer.
He does every week. And I took Pitts this year, and I have London. I mean, give these guys the ball.
Ugh.
Like, use them, you know? But, Baney?
No, as a production guy and all that stuff, what are your thoughts on that camera that the Falcons have, man? Like that aerial one? Have you been
I
seeing
like
those
that one.
shots? Dude, the one of Bijan this week was sick. He catches the ball one-handed behind his back, and it kind of follows him. I haven't seen anything that cool I mean, maybe since like March Madness, the courtside camera that kind of follows the players, but I would like to know your thoughts on that. I mean, it's awesome. I think it's awesome. I just want to talk about it basically.
I'm all for more and more football camera angles. I've been saying that for years. Like, broadcasts have used essentially for all sports. Like, for hockey, it's just that one camera that's over and it pans. Like, and then they started experimenting with like going behind and showing like and I'm like, why are we not doing this? Like, I want to see the game from different like, why does every NFL play have to be from that angle? Why can't we watch more plays? And then they'll put it in a broadcast and be like, oh, this is so cool. Okay, we're done with that. Yep, had enough. We showed you once. We're good. And we're like, I feel like most fans are like, this is awesome. I love. There's nothing like watching a pass play and they got that drone camera behind and you can actually like kind of see what the quarterback is looking at and as the routes and the play is developing. I'm all for as much of that and more of that in broadcast, more of that on TV, like less of just the lame same stuff we've been seeing over and over again for 30 years. Like, we have the technology. Why are we not using it? I am pro using technology and broadcasting as much as possible. More of it, please.
Well, just to go off that too, I don't know if you guys seen on Amazon Prime, they have that new channel where it actually kind of looks like a Madden setup. Shows the guy's name, shows
Or
the
X-Gen.
shows the name underneath the player, shows the route and whether the QB missed him wide open or not too. I think that's pretty cool. I was watching that. I might watch it again this Thursday too.
Well, I think that's a good point too, that these newcomers into the space, the Amazon, like again, it's been the same 3 or 4 networks doing this. Like they don't have any reason to innovate. It's the reason that we all argue for competition and capitalism and stuff, right? Like competition breeds better ideas because people are fighting over it. When it's like you have to watch Sunday Night Football on NBC, it's like NBC's like, we don't really have to do anything different. You're gonna watch. There's one game on and we got it. But you start getting more and more of these players into the space, especially these tech companies. Amazon's a great example, where they're like, hey, we're new to this. Like, we're going to try some shit. Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we're going to try some stuff. And yeah, I'm, again, totally for it and totally for these companies jumping in on this. Although it is annoying that you have to stream these games because the problems that come in with that, but separate issue.
Yeah, these next gen stats are evolving. It's crazy the stuff we can do now. So
I live on next gen stats.
Oh yeah, it's nuts. The game, like if you think about it, Dan, and all of us, when we were in high school, the stuff watching football in high school to watching football now, way different. Crazy how this game just all aspects just evolved. So
I just got a funny flashback when Mike was talking about watching football hits highlights. I imagine Tara yelling at him to keep it down while he's listening to bodies hit the floor and like Troy Polamalu highlights. He's running around, smacking his calf tattoo.
Yeah. Harrison. Don't forget about Harrison. Him and Woodley just popping people.
How could we?
And Heinz Ward had a couple nice little cracks, but this is about Dan today. Yeah. So we won't get into that, but anyone else got any more questions for Dan before we get into Dan Z and his top 3?
Yeah. I got one last one. Mike, or T, do you have one?
No, go ahead.
I just got one last one. What's your hottest football take for this year?
The Minnesota Vikings are going to make the playoffs.
Ooh. Wow.
Oh.
Damn. I wasn't ready for
That's
that.
It. You just leave it there. That doesn't need any. Just leave it there. No, it honestly, like, first of all, I admit that I was too high on the Vikings coming into the year. Now, I previewed all 32 teams in the NFL. I did over-under wins for every team. You're going to get some stuff wrong. You're going to get some stuff right. I was way too high on the Vikings. I thought that people were over-exaggerating their sort of luck factor last year. Like, I know all the stats, 11-0 in one-score games. I expected them to regress because you can't repeat 11-0 in one-score games. I didn't expect it to be completely the opposite. And I think, but that's also why I have faith that they're not as bad as they seem. If you look at all the advanced metrics, like they're essentially the Atlanta Falcons. Like they match up with Atlanta. Atlanta's 3-2. They haven't really played any differently. It's just a couple, the fumbles are killing them, obviously. But the Vikings really haven't been that bad, and it's just now they're 1-4 in one-score games, and they're losing the turnover battle. I think they're -9, they were tied with the Raiders going into Monday Night Football at -9 for worst in the league. I honestly think they've regressed too far that it has to come back the other way. And if you look at their schedule of their next 7 games, I think they play the 49ers, but other than that game, all of their games are super winnable. And I don't know. I think they go 5-2 over their next 7, which puts them at 6-6. Get Jefferson back. I think they sneak into the NFC playoffs.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. The turnover ratio is huge. I was placing my bets, doing some research, getting ready for the show. The Chiefs actually last week only had 4 more yards than the Vikings. Did you catch that, Dan? I mean, that's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Look at all the advanced metrics. Like if you look at the worst teams, they're who you'd expect. The Bears are way down, all that. Like Minnesota, and I'm not saying Minnesota's great. This is not an argument that Minnesota's awesome, but they're a league average team, and they shouldn't be 1-4. They should be 2-3 or 3-2 if a couple of bounces go their way that didn't. And I think they're due for positive regression because of how much negative regression they had from last year. I don't believe that they went 11-0 in one-score games last year, so this year they're going to go 1-11 in those games. Like, no, that's not really how it works. I should have been a little bit sharper on Minnesota, especially with their defense, but I'm still not giving up hope that Minnesota's as bad as everyone thinks they are.
Well, guys, you heard it here. Dan Z, Minnesota's going to sneak into the playoffs, so you can get all his content again on Outkick.com. So, anything else before we go into our next topic here?
Nope, send us away.
All right, boys. So I got my pens. I got my pad. Bainey Teak, you guys got yours ready? So we're going to go into Dan Z and his top three. So he's going to give us his top three bets. And we're going to even try and squeak out a start and a sit of the week after that. So first, Dan, why don't you kick us off and why don't you tell us about your hot streaks these past couple weeks? I know we talked about it early. I want you to share it.
Yeah, so I actually hit 62% in the regular season last year. Had a great year handicapping the NFL. It's really hard to do. That's not to pat myself on the back. It's just that really it's hard to gain value in NFL betting. Everyone does it. The books put so much money into it. There's really just not a lot of value in NFL betting, quite honestly. And I really didn't even start doing it thinking like, oh, I'm going to win all the time. It's just like, I just love the NFL and I like making games more interesting. So I'm going to start betting on them. So I hit 62% last year, had a great year. This year I went 2-2 in week 1, 2-2 in week 2. But I've got 3 winning weeks in a row, 3-2 in week 3, 4-1 last 2 weeks ago, and 3-1 last week. So 10-4 over the last 3 weeks. Yeah, we're feeling good about the process. I feel like the process is in a really good spot right now. The rule of Dan Z is what we call it on my Outkick podcast, which is essentially, like I said, it's hard to gain value in the NFL. The best thing you can do is look at what you think the public thinks and try to bet against it. And what I usually try to do is fade what I saw most recently. That is my number one rule of handicapping the NFL, is just whatever you saw last week, try to go against it, especially when everyone's jumping on it. So I'll kick us off with my first one. This is a perfect example. I'm back in the Patriots +3 at the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the fire Belichick chants getting all worked, they're getting all those, everybody's getting worked up. Belichick needs to be fired. Mac Jones is the worst quarterback. Like whenever everyone's piling on, when Stephen A. Smith starts talking about something, when Stephen A. Smith is saying fire Belichick, I'm like, okay, Stephen A. Smith doesn't know anything about the NFL. He's saying that, I'm going the other way. So for me, not only do we have the Patriots on that side of it, where it's like we're going to fade what we saw with the Patriots last week, which was an absolute disaster. In fact, it's 2 disasters in a row. But the Raiders won a game on Monday Night Football that was not an impressive win. That was more due to Jordan Love just being not very good. I don't think the Raiders win was that impressive, but it happened in primetime, which means the entire country watched it, which means there's an inflated sense of the Raiders right now and a very deflated sense of the Patriots right now. That all being said, that's why I'm back in the Patriots plus the points.
Hey, I like it. I have a similar rule. I tell these guys all the time, no team is as good as its best game or is as worse as its worst game. So
wow, that's a great phrase. Can you say that again?
I like it. I like it. Little tongue twister, Dan. Outkick.
Oh man.
So let's hear number 2.
Oh, I'm just gonna keep going. I thought you guys were gonna chime in with your bets.
Oh.
Like, no, it's all me.
These guys don't really bet, but hey, you guys have any comments?
I definitely agree with the logic behind the Belichick noise is crazy, and I will never put any money on the Raiders this season at all. So, yeah, getting the points, I like it.
I think Belichick really, really wants to beat Garoppolo.
Well,
not that matters or really factors in, but
McDaniels is
one
over
of those
there too.
things. Oh,
and Tom's a partial owner.
So
You're right. This is like a perfect spot for Belichick to just come out with some crazy game plan. Plus, he has an extra day on McDaniels. Belichick's a way better coach than McDaniels, and he has an extra day of prep. Thanks for reminding me. That's another point why you should back the Patriots.
Yeah. So I like the bet a lot. But
so one thing I've gotten really into and have seemed to have a lot of success with is I've actually started betting a lot less spreads and a lot more totals. I think totals are a little bit more indicative of if you can envision how a game is going to play out. I actually weirdly think spreads are a little more fluky just with the way, but I think if you can sort of picture how a game is going to play out, I think the total is a better indicator. So I bet a lot of totals and I bet a lot of unders because the public loves the over. So I tend to lean towards the under and finding those unders. One of those for me this week is your Falcons and the Commanders. Number one, the Falcons, as I said, run a 1978 offense. So that's great for unders. They've been great for the under this year. I don't expect that to change. Even last week, when they threw the ball 40 times, they still, I don't know if you know this, had a negative pass rate over expected, which means, are you guys familiar with that stat? Pass rate over expected? You guys talk about it?
We don't go over it, but we know what it is.
So the Falcons, despite throwing the ball over 40 times last week, still posted a negative pass rate over expected. That is a hallmark of Arthur Smith. I saw a stat that the Falcons were so successful on throwing the ball on early downs this week that Arthur Smith decided, we got to stop doing that. So they actually started running the ball even though they were having success and when they were trailing. I'm always going to look at the Falcons under. I considered betting it last week. The only reason I didn't is because they were playing Houston. And Houston, despite having a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach, is really aggressive, like surprisingly aggressive. And I didn't expect that. So I shied away from it only because I wondered if Houston might actually force Atlanta to speed up. The game still ended up going under, and I'm kicking myself for not betting it. But I'm back on the Falcons this week. I mean, Sam Howell versus Desmond Ridder, the total's 42.5. I honestly don't know that you could make this total low enough for me to not be interested in it, just based on both of these teams and the way they play. So I'm on the Commanders Falcons under 42.5 as bet number 2. And my final one, you can disregard everything I just said about betting unders because I did find an over I like this week, which is Rams Cardinals over 48.5. The Cardinals have given up like 69 points over the last 2 weeks. Their defense stinks. They had some fun the first couple weeks. They were like that frisky underdog team. And you see that a lot with teams. Like everyone expects you to be terrible. And actually, it's a great point back to like the fade what you're hearing, which was Arizona's going to be absolute trash. Of course, they came out and covered 3 games in a row, right? But reality kind of set in the last 2 weeks. They didn't cover against the 49ers. I bet against them last week. They didn't cover against the Bengals, obviously. The reason, though, that the line is a little high, I don't think the Rams are good enough to really be giving any team 7 points. That's why I like the total in this one. I think they're going to be a lot of points. The Rams offense is, with a healthy Stafford, is a ton of fun. They're slinging the ball all over the field. I expect that to continue. And the Cardinals, despite all their deficiencies, I'm not worried about the James Conner injury. I don't think that affects the total at all. In fact, if anything, it might force them to throw the ball a little more, which is great for us. So I like the over in the Rams Cardinals, 48.5.
Yeah, I know for sure the Cardinals surprised a bunch of us here too. We thought they were just going to lay down this season, and it's been a total opposite. So it's actually nice to see that.
The problem was they Gatorade bathed their coach after like the Cowboys game and was like, oh man, this is like your Super Bowl. And then you've seen it like the last 2 weeks, like, well, we won the Super Bowl, so we're good here, right? Like we're all set. Like they won the game they wanted to win that game. Like clearly you could see it in their faces, like their excitement, how they literally celebrated like they won a playoff game. Like, bro, it's week 3. You won a game in week 3. Like let's keep that in mind. And I think you're seeing that. But again, I still think they can score some points, and I like the Rams to score a bunch of points, so that's where I'm at on that one.
Yeah, especially Cup. Cup looked pretty good. I mean, coming back from the injury, and with Puka, everyone was like, "What's Cup gonna do?" I mean, Cup did what he does.
I was giving my dad a ton of shit because we're in the same fantasy league, a big money league that one of my buddies in Connecticut runs, and I was offering him Cooper Cup for like Travis Kelce, and he was like, Puka Nacua is going to cut into Cup's targets. And after the first drive, he had 6 targets. I texted him. I was like, what were you saying? You said something about cutting into Cup's target. I mean, he did only have 6 on the first drive. They threw the ball 8 times. He only had 6 of them. So you might be right. Nacua did have the other 2 targets. You might be right.
Speaking of your dad, sorry, before I let Beanie jump in. Dan Z, do you remember when we baited your dad into picking, I can't remember what it was, who it was?
Yes. And, who was the player? I can't remember the player, but yes, Mike and I. It's a live draft. TK, you were there, right? Were you there?
I think I might have been for this one, yeah.
And boys, we get a little sauced up for these drafts too, especially the older guys. Dan Z's dad's there. We got a couple other guys. These guys like to drink, so they were a little sauced up. So we messed with them a little bit. So
Mike turns to me at some point and he's like, "Hey, let's pretend this guy's still available."
Well, he kept asking about him, remember? Was it Allen Robinson?
I was going to say Allen Robinson, so it had to be it, because that was the name that was in my head, too, so it had to be.
I kept hearing him asking somebody this.
He mentioned it, like, once, and you were like, no. No. He mentioned it, like, one time. Mike was like, oh, we're going to do this. And he looks at me, he's like, yo, if Allen Robinson's still there at my next pick, dude, I'm taking him. And I was like, bro, oh my God, you're right. How is he still there? So sure enough, like my dad does like the old school, right? Like he's writing it down. He writes it down before he makes the pick. So I literally watched him write Allen Robinson on his paper and then proudly announce, with the whatever pick, I select Allen Robinson. And of course, everyone's just like, and if you take a player who's already been picked, you have to get down on your knees and do a shot out of the bottle with some guy kind of holding it near his dick. It's very homoerotic. And there's a whole spectacle of humiliation if you take a player who's been picked. So of course, as soon as he takes him, everybody just starts screaming like, oh, he's been taken. And I felt bad because it's my dad, and I told this story to I think I told this story on ESPN radio too.
You did. I remember that.
I did, and the host was like, "Nah, dude, like that's your dad. Like, you can't do that." I was like, he's like, "You didn't have to tell him he wasn't available, but you didn't also have to like play into it and be like, yo, you should take him."
Yeah, we did this for like 30 minutes, like just because he kept
I
not
think
taking
and
him.
at one
I was
point,
like, is this guy seriously not going to take him?
He straight up looked me in the eye and was like, "Is Allen Robinson available?" And I was like, "Yes." Yes, he is.
Boys, that shot is fireball. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I can't do it. Ugh. But Baney, it just led me into that.
No, that's great. I loved your advice about the overs and unders. I was thinking about taking the under in the London game again this week. I saw the last two unders hit. The games have kind of been stinkers. Any thoughts on that?
That actually probably will be on my card as well. You guys limited me to 3. If you gave me 4, that was going to be my 4th. Yeah, I love the under in the London game. I took the under in the London game this week, especially with two teams that haven't been in London. I mean, I know the Ravens went there early, but yeah, it screws with teams. Like, there's no doubt about it, which usually leads to a more conservative game plan too. They can't really implement everything they would want to implement in a normal week because it's not a normal week. They're doing a ton more press. Like, it's a big thing for the NFL, so they got to get these guys out there. They're doing all kinds of it is a truncated week for preparation, which is part of the reason you see a lot more conservative game planning. I also think the matchup lends itself to this. This is two teams that definitely want to run the ball. Lamar hasn't looked very good. Like, neither team, Tannehill hasn't looked very good. I think this is going to be a run-heavy game, and I love the under in the London game. I think that's a great bet.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm actually going to pop that on the paper. So now the boys are going to try and squeak a start of the week and a sit-em of the week for you. So we're gonna take Dan Z. If you can give us your start of the week at.
You know what you didn't give me though were like parameters for this. Like, what are we talking about?
We want to get you on the fly. We know you're a professional, so we want to get you on the fly. We want a.
Well, I know, but I need to know when you say start in a
fantasy
10-team league,
fantasy,
in a 14
standard,
team. Yeah, but
12 man PPR.
So it would have to be a guy
and a running back.
It would have to be
running back.
It would have to be a guy who you think people might not start, and you're saying it's like that's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to do, but I have one. I do have one.
We knew you would.
It's a wide receiver. It's a little out of left field. Again, this is for a little bit deeper leagues, but I love Josh Downs this week. He played great with Gardner Minshew. I think that's a huge improvement, by the way, for the entire Colts passing offense. I think it's good for Pittman. It's really good for everyone but Anthony Richardson owners. Because actually it's going to mean more of the running. It's just going to mean Anthony Richardson takes most of the touches on that team, and now he doesn't. Josh Downs actually had 7 targets, even with Richardson, in week 1 against Jacksonville. So they were looking his way, so they saw something, even as a rookie. Getting 7 targets in your first game, they saw something in the Jacksonville defense that they thought Downs could exploit. Now he's more integrated into the offense. Plus, you've got Gardner Minshew, who targeted him 9 times this past week. I think Josh Downs is a sneaky good DFS play at value, especially a guy you could start in a pinch. I mean, if you have, again, this is why this is so tough to do these, because if you have better options, sure, I'm not saying start Josh Downs over Cooper Kupp. Of course not. That would be stupid. But if you're in a pinch and you're trying to decide, he's a guy and a guy you should target on waivers as well if he's available.
And actually, that brings me to Baney. He was on his waiver wire target post. So, Baney, why don't you go and take that?
I'm a fan. I think he did. I think he's done some impressive stuff. I think he looks great in space, really fast. I think last week was going to be the cheapest you can get him in DFS because I tossed around that name. And unfortunately, I made the mistake of not taking him. And I think that it definitely made a difference in my lineup because I took Alex Pierce instead. And I regretted it with his 1 catch for 4 yards. So could have been a different outcome for me. cashed a couple lines, but that one did not, and I think that would have been a difference maker. So I think that's great advice how to start this week.
But DFS is also notoriously usually a little slow to catch up on pricing too. So I actually think you probably have one more week before, because it doesn't usually adjust upward that quickly, because they start putting out these prices because they have to get these contests out the second the 1 week ends, they got the next ones out. So this is actually a spot I think he might be a good play. And that leads to my sit, which is perfect. TK is going to love this. I've already basically explained it. I don't want any part of Drake London this week at all. I want, if I have anything else, I'm starting Josh Downs over Drake London. Heard it here first. I mean, look, they still posted a negative pass rate over expected despite throwing the ball 40 times. They're not going to throw the ball 40 times this week. They are favored at home. They are going, I took the under. I think this is going to be a low scoring, run the ball contest. I can't see London getting anywhere near value here. I think he's topping out at 4 or 5 catches for 40 yards, maybe. I mean, if you're starting Drake London this week, you're touchdown dependent. You're just hoping they get one shot in the red zone and they give it to him. You get your 10 points and you call it a week.
We'll let Teak take it from there.
Yeah, it's sad. They don't really target their playmakers in the red zone. It's strictly, and it's tiring to see as well. Even on first down drives, the first play is always a run. They're too predictable in play calling. So I would like to see, I didn't even look at it. I would like to see the touchdowns compared to who scored them. For the Falcons, I believe it's mostly Algier and Bijan so far. To be honest with you, I know Drake has yeah, even his was a rushing touchdown. So yeah, I like to sit. Drake London actually was my sit last week, but he had one of his best games, of course, in his season. So
Yeah, and Dan, it's funny you say that because in our, the 14-man high pressure league, I had number 1 overall pick. I took Justin Jefferson, so I will be starting Drake London this week. Don't have many options.
Dude,
Downs, I have waiver pick 4. He is. Hold on, let me check what Teak has.
is he out there?
All right, he's 6. Downs is there. I have it in. So
can we all
I
just
will
take a
moving it.
moment and
So-
just cry? I've never had Justin Jefferson on a team. Dude hasn't
me
been
too.
hurt ever. Literally not once in college, not once in the NFL. You go to that NFL injury report website where it shows their body and highlights the part. Nothing. I take the guy number 1 overall. I drafted Cooper Kupp. We had our draft literally the day before the season started. So Cooper Kupp was trending towards IR. So no one was taking him. I took Jefferson at 1, and at the 28-29 turn, I was like, I got to do it. I got to take Cooper Kupp. I don't care if he's out 4 weeks. 12 weeks of Cooper Kupp is still better right now than pretty much anything else I can do. Last week, finally, after all of that waiting, my lineup is Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson in a high money 14-team league. I have arguably the 2 best players in fantasy football in my lineup. I am kicking back. My feet are up. I am smiling yeah, I beat you suckers. And then Justin Jefferson gets the first injury of his football career. Are you kidding me? God, this is such a stupid game. Why do we play this retarded game? It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
I feel the pain. I wanted Jefferson in every league. Finally, you know how we do the order. You got to pick the chips, pick your spot. I picked number 1, took Jay Jetta. In a 14-man league, that's hard when you lose the first overall pick. 14-man. I mean, I'm bummed out too, as much as you, dude. I want to cry too.
Not only that, you guys still don't do the free agent auction budget, right? Which you need to switch to. Anyone who's not playing free agent auction budget, to all your listeners, if you want fantasy advice from me, number 1, play in a league with free agent auction budget. Traditional waivers are absolutely the bane of my existence. They're dumb. I think they should be outlawed completely. Dumb. Now, that all being said, of my $1,000 budget, I spent $900 of it on Devin Achane. This is not a good day. This is not a good day for me.
Oh, man. Yeah,
This is
injuries.
not a good day for me.
Injuries. My 12-man league, I took Eckler, St. Brown, Gibbs, all 3 hurt last week, and Achane. 4 injuries, a huge part of fantasy. Crazy.
Oh, speaking of injuries, though, I had this as a note that I wanted to make, which is look, you're not going to sit Breece Hall if he's on your roster. You're going to have to play him, but I think he's a terrific sell high right now coming off a big game. Like, I just don't see I love Breece Hall. Trust me. I think he's incredibly talented, and he should have had a big year. And I would be really, really upset if I drafted Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall. Because it's like, it's not even my player that got hurt. Another player got hurt. And now I'm screwed. But the fact of the matter is, like, no one is worried about Zach Wilson at this point. Yes, Breece could always break a 70-yard play, but that's essentially what you're hoping for. Like, if he doesn't break a 70-yard touchdown, you're not getting more than, like, 6 points tops just because their safeties come way down against Zach. They're like, dude, he's not going to beat us over the top. What are we doing here? So if I could find someone to take Breece Hall and think that game is indicative of what I'm getting the rest of the season, I would probably try to do that.
Dude, I first year I get Kelsey too. Kelsey's out off and on. I mean, he came back, still had a good game, but getting kind of tired.
Did you see him trying to sneak back onto the field, and then the coaches like went and pulled him off the field? It's a great video.
He's missed minimal to no games in his career, and literally start the season off this way. I don't know if the Taylor Swift curse is real, but I'm not putting that out there.
It's real.
Yeah, actually, I just got a text, Dan, from one of our fans. Everyone's asking, "Are you a Swiftie?"
Listen, I don't want to start any bad blood here, but nobody? Okay.
No, I saw it.
I like some T Swift. Listen, I like a little T Swift. If I'm gonna play here's the rule with Taylor Swift in the car: windows up. I ain't pulling up to a stoplight, windows down, with T Swift. But if you see me with windows up in the summer, decent chance there's a little T Swift going on in that car.
So in the wintertime, you are jamming out?
In the wintertime, it's fair game. You'll never know. You'll never know what's going on.
We are from the north. So.
We found out why his windows are tinted, folks. We found out.
Oh, man. Well, any final things for our man Dan Z here?
No, man. Thank you so much for making the time for us, though. We really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, his X is on the screen, so go ahead and follow that. You can find, again, all of his content on Outkick, not Outlook. I'm sure he does have an email through there as well, probably. But hopefully we can get him on again down the road here.
Yeah, guys, this was a lot of fun, man. Anytime.
It's been a pleasure, Dan Z. So
always.
It's Outkick, not Outlook. So I was looking at I was sending you a lot of emails during the week, so I apologize. So we will be sure to put all the socials up on the screen.
Wait, before we go, TK, you got to try my last name.
Want to hear it? Say it.
Zaksheske.
Perfect.
Boom.
That wraps it up.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Let 'Em Know.
I heard some stuff. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought he was having a seizure, Dan.
Join our community and follow us on all
dude's got it.
socials.
It's 12 hours.
Keep up with the episodes on YouTube,
I broke it
Spotify,
down.
or Apple Podcasts.
He did.